Before I start, I'd like my husband to pray for me. I haven't spoke to you all, I don't think.
Father, we are thankful today for your presence that is with us. We are thankful for the Holy Spirit that we feel in our hearts and in our midst today. And we pray your special blessings now upon the time of sharing your word. We ask you to be with Lord Mimi today and let your Holy Spirit speak through her as well as speak to her. And we will give you honor in Christ's name. Amen.
Well, it's an honor to be standing in front of all of you today. There are many here that I admire in the faith, and I don't feel like I ever measure up to any of them, but God has given me something that he wants me to share with you. And so when I was asked to speak, I was like, Lord, what am I going to speak about? What is it you want me to talk about? And he just said in my spirit, the goodness of God. And I'm like, okay, so that's a big topic. So let me see what I can do to narrow it down some. And it was so funny because the next few services I was in, they either sang the goodness of God or they talked about the goodness of God. And so I'm like, okay, Lord, I think that's a confirmation. So I think it's beneficial to think about the goodness of God, especially we're getting ready to come into Thanksgiving and where we think about our blessings that the Lord, has given us. And so I went first to the dictionary, good old Webster's, and I wanted to see what they had to say. And so for them, they say that it is the quality of being good, like the state of being good, or being kind and honest and generous and helpful. Then there is a nutritious part of something that's good, the physical qualities of something that makes it valuable, excellent, perfect, such as timber or soil. That's what it said. And then there's moral qualities that constitute Christian excellence, such as moral virtue or religion. And then there are acts of kindness that we can show. We can show goodness to others. So we also know that goodness, when you hear the word goodness, what does it bring to mind from the Bible? Anybody? Creation story? Fruit of the Spirit. All right, so we've got 9 fruits of the Spirit, and we've got Galatians 5:22. There we go. And so I read this, and I liked the way they described these different fruits. The fruit of the Spirit is love. It's an unselfish concern for others or affection. It's joy, exuberance for life, peace, which is serenity. You don't see much of that anymore. Patience, not the ability to wait, but how we act while we're waiting. And we develop a stick-to-itiveness, to stick to things, and that's sometimes hard. And then there's kindness, that sense of compassion in the heart. And they said goodness in this translation, a conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people. Faithfulness is being involved in loyal commitments. Gentleness is not needing to force our way in life. That's a hard one sometimes. And self-control, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. Against such, there is no law. Why would there need to be a law against any of that? There's no reason for it, because everything is good. Everything is what needs to happen. And so I always love that part, against such, there is no law. We need no law against any of those. So I often think that the importance of the fruit of the Spirit is often overlooked. We look at other qualities, we think, oh, they're really anointed, the speaker, they have a lot of charisma. But when you think about it, it's their daily life that you need to be observing if you're watching someone. And to me, if you see someone that exhibits the fruit of the Spirit, then they know the Lord, and they've let the Lord move in their life. So what I would like for you to do on your little note cards I gave you, there's 2 assignments. First one is I want you to look at the fruit of the Spirit and see which one is the hardest for you to exhibit. You don't have to tell anybody. This is just between you and that card. Which one is the hardest for you to exhibit in your life? And then think about it and ask yourself why. Why is that the hardest for me? This is just between you and the Lord. According to Easton's Bible Dictionary definition, for man, the attribute of goodness is not a mere passive quality, but the deliberate preference of right to wrong. You have a choice. It's the firm and persistent resistance of all moral evil and choosing and following all moral good. So, goodness can be seen in our actions, but our heart must be pure. If you know someone that is a good person and they're a Christian, you want to be around them. You admire them. You think that they are closer to the Lord, and you strive to be closer. But as a divine attribute, goodness is first described, or it's a first description of God's essential character, his godliness, his holiness, his purity. So in Exodus 33, 18 through 23, Moses is talking to the Lord, and the Lord's talking to Moses. And Moses said, "Please show me your glory." To me, that's kind of brave for Moses to ask the Lord that. But God said, "I will make all my goodness, or my godliness, my holiness, my purity, pass before you. And I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. For I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show compassion on whom I will show compassion." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live." Then the Lord said, "Behold, there is a place beside me, and you shall stand there on the rock. And while my glory is passing by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and protectively cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take away my hand, and you will see my back, but my face shall not be seen." So here God's glory, his goodness, represents everything that he is. But he is so good and so godly, so pure, that we as human beings cannot see his face until we reach our heavenly home. So I was thinking about how God's goodness was exhibited throughout the Bible, and it's numerous stories. And this is a non-exhaustive list. But in my mind, in Genesis, Leah is shown God's goodness for being unloved by being blessed with many children. In Exodus, God's goodness is shown the Israelites by bringing them out of the bondage of Egypt. In Joshua, Rahab is shown God's goodness by having her life spared after she helped the spies. In Ruth, Naomi experiences the goodness of God through her daughter-in-law Ruth's faithfulness, and then Naomi becomes the grandmother of Obed and the future grandfather of King David. In 1 Samuel, Hannah experiences the goodness of God by producing a long-awaited son, Samuel. In 1 Kings, Solomon experiences the goodness of God by receiving the gift of wisdom. In Esther, Esther was granted the goodness of God by having her life spared by the king and thus saving the Jews from annihilation. In Job, the goodness of God blessed Job during the second half of his life as much as he had at the first. In Daniel, Daniel experiences many goodnesses of God, but one was just shutting the mouths of the lions. In Jonah, the Ninevites experienced God's goodness by receiving the message of repentance. In Matthew, Elizabeth experienced God's goodness by birthing John the Baptist, the precursor to Christ. In Mark, the little children experienced goodness from Jesus by his blessing them. In Luke, the woman that suffered for 12 years with the issue of blood received God's goodness through healing. And in John, the Samaritan woman experienced the goodness of God and an encounter with Jesus at the well, which opened the whole new ballgame for the Samaritans. And the list goes on and on and on. Those were just ones that came to my mind. God's still showing his goodness, and we must look for it. In this world of things that's going on like it is, we must look for God's goodness. So I want to give you a few examples of God's goodness in my life, and these are all true. In middle school, I was probably around 12 years old. I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and it mainly affected my hands and my feet. My joints would swell, my feet would swell. It made it very difficult to even make a fist, made it difficult to walk at times. And it was not a good diagnosis to get at that point. So one morning, I woke up with extreme pain and swelling in my joints and my hands and my feet. And I was able to stand up. I was unable to put my shoes on to go to school. So my mom took me to our family doctor. Dr. Jones is what his name was. And he looked at me and he said, you're probably going to be a cripple the rest of your life, and you're going to be in a wheelchair. Now, grant you, I was only in middle school. And I looked at him and said, no, I won't. I will not. I said, we're having revival at church this week, and I'm going to get prayed for. And so that evening, back when girls wore patent leather shoes and dresses to church, I put on my patent leather shoes, but I could barely get them hooked. And when time came for prayer for healing, I wobbled down that aisle because, one, it hurt, and two, my shoes were barely on my feet. And I was determined that I wasn't leaving until the Lord healed me. And you know what? He did. I've never dealt with it ever again. Ever. Example 2. When I was 30, Candace was 5, and Carlin was 6 months. I had lost a lot of weight, lost a lot of hair, had terrible headaches, and I couldn't even climb 2 or 3 stairs without being really short of breath. And after a while, they figured it out that my red blood cell count was half of what it should have been. And so I had gone to an ER, and I think it was on New Year's Eve or day? Maybe New Year's Day. He was on call, so he couldn't go with me. And so I went to the ER, and the physician I saw, who never orders a chest x-ray, evidently is what they said, she ordered a chest x-ray on me and core lab work. And it showed this suspicious area around my breastbone, which they called a tumor. And I'm like, no, you can't call it a tumor. You don't know what it is yet. But anyway, so they admitted me in the Army hospital for units of blood. And this was back before the blood was really so well. And so every time, and I think I got 4 units, and they had to stick me 14 times to get an IV going. Literally 14 times. And so whenever I would get a unit of blood, I would pray over it first. Because I was like, I don't know what's in this blood, so the Lord, you take care of this blood, because I need blood, and just let it be pure. And so so I got the blood transfusions, and I was supposed to be sent by helicopter, by medevac, to Fort Gordon, Georgia, which was on the other side of the state. And but I was, Carlin was 6 months, Candace was 5. I didn't want to go by medevac. I wanted to drive. I wanted to go home and pack my clothes. I wanted, to be with my kids. And my parents came, and so they let me go, and we drove over the next day, and they admitted me that night. And when the little resident that admitted me through the ER said to me, "Have you ever had a bone marrow biopsy?" And I said, "No, and I don't want one." Because I'd seen them done in nursing school, and but I did end up having one. And so I was, after several biopsies and everything, they diagnosed me with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so when I was admitted that night, it was a very dark place for me, because I was put in a room with 3 other women. It was a ward room, and they were all undergoing chemo. And I'm like, why did they put me on the cancer floor? They don't know I have cancer, And so it was really dark that night. And they couldn't stay with me because of the women, so I had to stay there by myself. And I'm like, Lord, I'm scared. I want to raise my girls. I don't want to die. I want you to touch me. And every time I just flipped open my Bible, there was a promise: ask, you shall receive; knock, the door will be opened. And I was like panicking. Okay, Lord, what? And he gave them to me right then. And so I was in such shock and disbelief. But when he gave me those promises, I clung to them. Now, the days ahead were challenging. I'm not going to lie to you. I chose to have my treatments instead of Fort Gordon, to go back to Fort Benning, so I could be close. I could take care of the girls, and the best I could. He did most of it. But we had tremendous support from the Army family at that time. And on my days of chemotherapy, which was, I believe, on Thursdays, I chose to go in the afternoon, because Thursday morning was our Protestant Women of the Chapel Bible study. And I wanted to go to that and be fed. I wanted my faith to be increased when I went to that chemotherapy treatment. And I did it. I mean, God touched me, and I was able to go through it. Now, I know this sounds vain, but ladies, you may understand. I didn't want to lose my hair, and all of the treatments that I was undergoing, one was, they called it Big Red, adriamycin, was known to your hair just fall out in clumps. Okay, so I'd already lost a lot of hair because of my red count being so low, being so anemic. And I was like, Lord, I don't want to lose all my hair. There was a lady at the Protestant Women of the Chapel. I don't remember her name. I wish I had it. But she said, Mimi, I'm going to pray that you don't lose all your hair. And I'm like, okay, please do. I don't want to lose all my hair, which I didn't. It was very thin, and I did have a wig I wore a couple times, but it was so hot in Georgia, I'm like, forget that. It was hot. So I had this tiny little ponytail in the back, but I didn't lose it all. And God cares about even the little things. So after 6 months of chemo and a month of radiation, it was all all gone. I mean, it was gone before it was all done, but God was good. Now, I had to still go through the treatments. I could have chose not to, but you know what? God gives people knowledge and to know how to treat things. Why would you turn that down? Why? Now, the rheumatoid arthritis, when I was young, there was no, other than steroids, there was really no cure. And so I had to depend upon the Lord for that one. You know what I mean? But I depended upon him all through this other time, too. And there were rough days, but there were good days. So another a sweet example was when, in May of 18, our family received our twin miracles, David and Renee. And then in March of this year, we received our third miracle, Earl Ray. Earl is my daddy's name, so that's where that came from. You see, there was very little chance of David and Carlin having children. But God's goodness was exhibited in 3 precious children that brings so much joy to all of our families. I could go on and on. Just the miracle that this girl right here has, I need to write a book about. But, so what I'd like for you to do now is on your index card, and you can flip it over if you want to. I want you to take just a few minutes and think about God's goodness in your life. Your lives are, you've not been alive much compared to me. Some of you all have, but just think about just something that you know God's been good to you about, and write it down. I'm going to give you just a few minutes. If there are any of you that would like to share something, you're more than welcome to do that. We'll have to keep it short, but if you want to share something that God has done for you that would increase the faith or just help someone else, feel free to do it. Just stand up and tell us what God has done for you. Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. Anybody else? Erica? you, Erica.